Hello, dear listeners. It's CoachBusi. I am back. Today, I have such an interesting, exciting guest who had me up just so excited because he is someone who was a Toastmaster, is a renowned speaker, global speaker, and an author, and so many more other things. I am not going to steal his thunder. I am going to ask Douglas to come on and introduce himself to the listeners. Doug, welcome to Toast Talk with Coach Busi. How are you today?
Thank you so much. Good. Thank you. How's life treating you?
Awesome. Now that I have you on this podcast, I am doing
delighted
really good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. And like you said, I started off in Toastmasters, and I joined Toastmasters fresh out of high school. I was actually a very shy kid, and I found something wonderful about the whole concept of Toastmasters, which was that you could go backstage and prepare the very best version of yourself in a place where it's quiet, you can think it through, design everything that you want to say, even think about the body language. And that all happens backstage. Then you get to step onto the proverbial stage and show that best version of yourself. And Toastmasters is so structured that it draws out the best possible version of you. And I found that absolutely addictive. And at the time, I wasn't even aware that there was such a thing as a paid professional speaker. But thanks to Toastmasters, I've spent the last couple of decades doing just that. And it's taken me around the world. It means that I now have friends in Turkey, in Australia, in Mauritius, all over the world. And I couldn't be more grateful for the launchpad that Toastmasters provided.
Absolutely amazing. I love where you went straight with that, which is the genesis of it all. Now, we have something that we do on Toast Talks with Coach Busi, and that is we give a shout out to the club that starts the journey for you. Which club were you a member of?
Well, for everybody around the world who knows Mr. Tim Knight's DTM, I've got to say, Tim Knight's DTM. It was Florida Toastmasters in Johannesburg. And in fact, I've actually been a member of a couple of clubs, three clubs, come to think of it. The one that got me going was Florida Toastmasters in Joburg. The second one was the Golden Gavel Club. And the third was Santon Toastmasters, where I was for, I think about, must have been 7 or 8 years.
Wow. Mr. Tim Knight's DTM. Absolutely awesome. That's one thing I also like about Toastmasters, the way we get to interact and network. Because that's when I saw you were giving a shout out to one of my favorite people, DTM. I said, now this is my person. He is in the tribe. There's an African way when we say saying where we say that you are only a stranger once. After we get to know your name, you are part of us. And I find that as true as it is in the African cultures, in Toastmasters, that is the truth. It is also the same thing. The minute you introduce yourself to me, we are now Toastmasters. We're in a community and we know each other and we can rock together. So thank you.
Absolutely. And what other community would allow you to meet and associate with world champions as though they were your friends? And also just this wonderful discovery that is part of the ethos of Toastmasters, that when you meet these men and women who have literally won the top spot, best speaker in the world for the year, you discover that these are just among the most wonderful people, so humble, so willing to give of their time. And I think it's perhaps one of the things that rings true throughout the world of speakers. It certainly goes beyond Toastmasters into the world of professional speakers, where there's a wonderfully healthy idea that if professional speakers are seen as something valuable, something worthwhile, something that does good in the world, it raises the perceived value across the entire industry. So perhaps unlike a lot of other industries where it can be extremely competitive, we are one of the unique spheres of life where growing one another makes the entire enterprise more valuable in the eyes of the public. So it's just such a wonderful thing to be a part of if you are looking to add Toastmasters and public speaking leadership skills to your career. But beyond that, if you're planning on making them your career, you're actually entering an incredibly generous sphere of life and one with fantastic comradeship. I just can't recommend it highly enough.
Ah, I get you. I am right there with you. You are preaching to the choir. Now, Jim Quick has a phrase, a quote that I like. He says, "Genius is in pattern recognition." And I'm listening to you now and saying, I'm a genius because I'm recognizing the patterns that you are bringing in because you are in that world that I aspire to go to. And I know that a lot of Toastmasters have that desire to become
Hmm.
speakers on the public in the public space, because a lot of people have
Yes,
a
speakers,
word
trainers,
inside them.
coaches. Yeah.
There's a whole industry that is growing, and Toastmasters have that unique opportunity to step in there and put in their contribution. Now, what is your key area that you speak on, write on? What's your message? What is the space that you are dominating?
Okay, it morphed over time. And in fact, I found myself in an unusual situation when I was starting to compete at, say, the World Championships level with Toastmasters. And as a result of that, I started receiving requests to come and do this at a corporate level. Come and speak for our company. We'd like to pay you to appear as a guest keynote speaker. And that put me into an odd situation because I was young. To share expertise with an audience, you have to have some expertise. You have to have something valid to share. And I found that the only way in which I was able to do something authentic at the time, something that had a degree of integrity, was I realized that being part of these speaking contests had created a platform that led to further work. And I thought that's the thing I'd actually like to speak on. And my first book and talk were titled Own Your Industry, How to Position Yourself as an Expert. And it's this idea that when you put yourself forward, when you are seen in platforms, when you speak in public, you appear on the radio, media, television, podcasts, and so forth, an interesting thing starts to happen. You have this upward spiral of success. The more you do it, the more it starts coming to you. And I wrote this book titled Own Your Industry, 50 Ways to Position Yourself as an Expert. And for a couple of decades now, I've been speaking on that. I have added a lot to that over the years. I've branched out or perhaps grown into speaking about leadership, culture, productivity, and perhaps my favorite talk at the moment, and the one that gets booked about the most, is called They're Your Rules, Break Them. And it's based on a book of the same title, They're Your Rules, Break Them. The basic idea is it's how leaders can look at their team, their scenario, their organization, their entire landscape, and perceive things that are only being done because they've always been done that way. And in doing that, look for fresh ways of doing things, break the rules, approach life in new patterns, and so on. And that's now an hour-long keynote, and it's one that I just love because it's kind of rebellious and perhaps a little sexy.
I can imagine. Now that's something, that book I will be going and looking for because I have that kind of philosophy. I just didn't know there was a book behind it. I raised my daughter in a way that culturally would have been called unconventional. I didn't follow the rules as it were.
Yeah,
And that's simply because I think that every mother inherently has the roadmap for their own child. Having a book that I can read and that can back up what I've already done would be absolutely fantastic. So I am
brilliant.
coming after that book. Thank you for that. You mentioned that in your Toastmasters journey, you competed, you went into the contests and everything. Tell us a little bit about that. That intrigues me because I find contests to be interesting. Tell me about
Yeah.
your journey
I,
through contests and how hard
well,
you
I can
went and
start.
all
I can start with cool. I'll start with the lasting trauma. I still can't hear a 3, 2, 1 countdown without my heart rate going through the roof. When people go, and in third place, and in second place, like my palms start to sweat. So you want to be a little careful with this one, putting yourself through this. But yes, I was, how young was I? I must have been second year of Toastmasters, and I joined when I was 18. So I guess when I was 19, I competed for the first time. And over the next couple of years, I got further each time that I tried to the point where in 2024, no, sorry, 2004, not 2024, I was 23 years old and I was fortunate enough to get through the semifinals and then the finals of the World Championships. Now, that particular year, I didn't have a second speech prepared. So what happened was I had the strongest possible presentation for semifinals, and to my astonishment, I got through. And that gave me something like 3 days to put together an all new presentation. And I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but that was actually the best I ever did because that brand new one placed second to Randy Harvey, or you may know him as Fat Dad, the winner of the
yeah.
2004 World Championships. And yes, that's the furthest I got at the time. That was the furthest any competitor from Africa had gone. We've since won it. I'm delighted to say that was overdue. But what a thing to go through. I mean, on the one hand, it's racking. There are few things you can do that will put you through the grinder to a greater extent than competing in Toastmasters
Yeah.
contests. On the
Yeah.
other hand, it draws so much out of you. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
such a wonderful introduction to this global network. I mean, I have the honor and privilege of being able to jump online and have a conversation with past world champions who I'm now blessed to count as friends as a
Mm.
result of going through all of that. And it's a life-changing experience. And I strongly recommend it with that little word of caution, which is, boy, is it hard going.
And always have the second speech ready just in case you make it.
Always have a second speech ready. Do not do what Douglas did.
You may not be as fortunate as Douglas was. Caution, caution, caution. We have taken that into consideration. Doug, I am curious to know at what point did you know that you could make a career out of public speaking? What
Right.
what was the trigger? What was the sign? Again, going back to pattern recognition, right? So give us a little bit
Yeah.
of insight into how does one know?
Okay. You have to arrive at the point where the business is at least starting to come to you. And what I mean by that is any speaker, in fact, any entrepreneur starting out, you have to market yourself. You have to get out there. You have to share your profile. You have to show your value to the world, whether you're doing that online, at live events, which is ideal, whatever the case might be. There will come a point where you start to have people say to you, come and tell that story for my group. Come and share that message with my group of people, and so on. You have to be hearing that enough before you jump ship. And something that I would do differently, advice to my younger self, is if that is what you plan to do, keep your costs as low as you can. Because while the speaking industry can be incredibly well paid, I mean, you can speak and be paid in pounds, in dollars, whatever the case might be, it is unbelievably unpredictable. And perhaps one of the great differences between, say, a classic Toastmasters speech where you are developing your skills and a paid professional speech is you actually have to start looking at it as a product. And what I mean by that is you have to ask the question, what does this solve for a paying audience? If you want to target, say, professional groups of people, corporate and usually financial groups tend to be the best paying clients. You have to look at that world and say, what do they pay for? And they pay for people who are able to help with the leadership, help with the sales, show clever ways forward in terms of raising productivity, getting teams to work together, getting people to be more goal-oriented, things of that nature. So it's not just about your excellence on a stage. It's also about the value of the idea to an organization that is trying to raise people up and make a profit. And when you start thinking about it that way, things begin to change. It is a business after all. The stagecraft matters. The entertainment factor matters greatly. If you really want to accelerate a professional speaking career, be highly entertaining, be very funny, be emotionally moving, all those good things we learn in Toastmasters, but it must also be valuable. And that's the thing to keep your eye on.
That is clear. I know I'm going to go back and take notes on this. I hear no fluff, have substance as you go. So just being creative and fun will not cut it, but it's this whole cocktail of this array of things that you've just told us about that we need to put together,
Absolutely.
and then we can
All the
come out and
Toastmaster
make some
skills.
money.
Exactly. It's all the Toastmaster skills plus the application in real lives. What can they do with it? How does it change things for them? What solutions do you have to offer? And one of the things that takes a little pressure off that, I mean, if you are a young speaker just starting out, and you're listening to this and saying, "Well, I've never been a CEO. I've never been the captain of a rugby squad. What do I have to offer?" The information is already out there. There are business magazines galore. There are lessons that have been learned out in the world. If nothing else, can you report them with excellence? And I'll just give you an example of that one. Later this week, I'm doing a presentation on productivity. And all I've done is I've found the smartest techniques that leaders use that have been reported about in business books, in things like Harvard Business Review. And I've taken those principles, take each principle and turn it into an exciting story with a little humor, and then show the audience how to apply it to their world. So it's not as bad as you might think. You don't have to have had the experiences firsthand. You can be an entertaining reporter on valuable ideas. And that takes a little of the pressure off.
That really does. And I'm reminded of one of Steve Covey's 7 habits, sharpen the sword. And that is a way
Yes.
that I can sharpen the sword when I am still not confident to give my own experiences. Absolutely key. That is diamond. That is world class information that you are bringing to this podcast. And I am forever grateful. If you were, God forbid, or rather years and years from now on your deathbed and you have had this amazing life that you've had, and you have
Yep.
5 minutes to give your grandkids, your great grandkids, a message that will propel them, that will help them as they carry on with their journey. What message would that be that you would give them, Doug?
The very first thing that I would do as a person of faith is I would say, I want to see you there once you go too. Make sure you end up upstairs with me. That's the message to my son. That's the message to my grandchildren. There is nothing more important than that. All of this is temporary. I want to see you there. That's the part that matters. Secondly, we're here for such a short period of time. And in my own faith, I mean, the most common biblical instruction from heaven to earth is do not be afraid. And I think it's one of the big things we learn about in Toastmasters is overcoming fear, but it's possibly one of the biggest things we learn in life. The things that we are terrified of, generally are not as bad as we expect. And from what I understand, from the sort of advice that people do give on their deathbeds, most of it is about the regrets of never having tried. You live once. So, don't look back and wish you had had the courage to try something that might have been life-changing. What's the worst that happens? You fail? So what? People fail. You get up, you try again. They laugh at you? So what? People laugh at you. Try. You have this gift of life. It is precious. It is something that is beyond value. Value and honor it by making the most of it. I do a tangent about that in my last 5 minutes.
That I buy into totally. And I hear you saying, keep the main thing, the main thing, the main thing all the way through. And for you, it's what happens after this side of eternity,
Yep.
one, and two, this whole life is short, make it count. I'm going to twist
Phenomenally
it
short.
and make it applicable to Toastmasters because I really enjoy this space. When you said that about time being short, we pay our dues usually every 6 months.
Hmm.
The first 6 months, what is it that you're going to do with the subscription that you've paid, the membership, the investment that you've put in? Because it can go by so quickly. You've made
Yeah.
the subscription and you don't give a speech and you don't take
Yeah.
a role. You only attend 3 meetings. That is not being a good steward. Again, subscribing to the book of wisdom that you speak of. We are to be
Absolutely.
good stewards.
Yeah.
When you were a Toastmaster, did you set goals in place? You must have, because for you to get to the contest, dude, I
Yeah.
am just sweating bullets just thinking about going into contest. My heart, my mind all wants to, but something just makes me go, oh my gosh. And you see, you
Yeah.
casually said, I came second in the international, the world. It wasn't an area, it wasn't a club, it wasn't a district. You just casually mentioned that, oh, I went to the final. Dad, don't do that to some of us. Don't do that to some of us. Tell us about your
Yeah.
goals. How did you set those goals?
I was relentless when I started off. I was 18 years old, and in fact, it was because of an article that had a little picture of Tim Knights in the Rudderport Record, my local newspaper, and it said, "Come and join a Toastmasters club." Now, I'd had a Toastmasters club do a youth leadership course in my high school, and I loved it. So the second I turned 18 and I was eligible to join, I was in there. And I decided that I wanted to get that first qualification as fast as it was possible to do. So I attended every meeting consecutively, and at each meeting, if I was able to, I got my name onto the agenda. And I got that, what was it called? The CC at the time, competent communicator, as fast as it is possible to do. And I think that level of immersion makes quite a big
Mm,
difference. When you hear people talking about, say, learning a new language, they'll often say that the best thing you can do is go throw yourself into that culture and be surrounded
mhm,
by it nonstop. And it's that forcing yourself to live in that world without cease for a long period of time. And the same thing happened as a result of immersing myself so deeply into Toastmasters. It was like every couple of weeks, I've got new material. I was doing table topics as well as the prepared speeches. And the learning curve is phenomenal when you take yourself through that. And
mhm,
again, we sort of look at that as potential for disaster. What could go wrong? Well, the weird thing is it actually goes better when you do it that way around because you still have the halo effect of the last meeting. You still remember the things that you're working
mm,
on, what went well, what didn't. And past world champion Darren LaCroix says the best thing you can do is three things: stage time, stage time, stage time. It's absolutely true. The more time you spend doing this without gaps in between, the better. And I find this works at a professional level too. If I have, say, 3 paid speeches in a week, by the second and third one, it almost feels casual. It feels like easy. It feels like old hat. You just go through the motions. But
mm.
if I have a few weeks with no presentations, that's when the palms start sweating again. That's when everything feels a little rustier than it should. That level of
Yeah.
immersion makes a massive difference.
And on that gold nugget, Dad, this has been amazing having you. Now, I am having 100 voices on Toast Talks with Coach Busi. 100 voices representing the 100 years of impact that Toastmasters has had in the century that Ralph Smedley created. It is an amazing thing for me to have these stories come on and we share, all because one person had a dream. He wanted to
Yeah.
get people to be competent speakers. Started off with young boys. Thank God the girls were also let in. Otherwise, I would not be here. What would you
Yeah.
like to say in appreciation to Toastmasters as a community that has helped set you up to be this really well celebrated, well sought after speaker, author, an amazing human being that everybody just wants to get closer to whenever we are given the chance. Your last
Thank you.
comment on Toastmasters, Doug.
Sure. You know, it's such an easy phrase to say, 100 years of changing lives. But when you begin to unpack the enormity of that, at the level of each life, I am merely one. Here is a human being who came out of school shy, unable to communicate ideas. And as a result of 100 years of Toastmasters, one person's idea to start this club, I've traveled around the world. I hope that I've been able to impact other lives, and who knows how far out that goes when people with insights about ways forward are able to share them with charisma, with good articulation. How much of an impact does that make in waves going outward? We can never know. It's so quick and easy to say 100 years of changing lives. When you begin to explore how big a meteorite strike that is, it is perhaps beyond comprehension. Well done, Toastmasters International. You truly do change lives. You changed mine.
Absolutely amazing. And as Toastmasters changed your life, that also means each and every listener has the capacity, has the ability, has the opportunity to sweat their Toastmaster dollars and change lives in whatever sphere they are playing in. Doug, thank you for honoring your call, the call on your life to be a leader, a speaker, an author. Thank you for the humble heart for accepting my call and coming on to Toast Talks. You have given us a wealth of nuggets. We really appreciate you. And when I say we, it's not the royal we, me, myself, and I. I am speaking about CoachBusi and the listeners who are going to be watching and listening to this talk. Thank
You
you
are
so
most
much.
welcome. And thank you for the great work that you're doing. I mean, 100 voices, what a great idea. And more strength to you.
Thank you so much. And all the best. I am sure you and I, since we are no longer strangers, we will be talking over and over again. Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Have a good rest of the day.
Only a pleasure.